queen who seized power by ending the life of her husband on their wedding night, a prophet king who commanded the winds and conversed in the languages of birds, spirits of the unseen world diving deep into oceans to build him palaces of crystal and pearl, and a small crested bird carrying a message that would alter the course of human history. This is the saga of Bilqis and Solomon, the Queen of Sheba and the King of Israel. It is a narrative etched into holy scriptures, yet few truly grasp the intricate details of this ancient epic. Deep in the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, a story unfolded that defies the limits of the imagination, featuring miracles, political intrigue, and a civilization that thrived for 1,000 years. They controlled the trade of incense, frankincense, and myrrh, commodities that were once sold for their weight in gold. Sheba was not merely a kingdom lost in the dunes. It was a marvel of the ancient world. It was an empire that transformed a barren, scorching desert into a lush, verdant paradise. They constructed the Dam of Marib, an engineering miracle of its time. Tonight, we will recount every detail, every event from the Genesis to the Revelation. We will explore how a massive dam was constructed without modern technology, how a woman rose to absolute power in an era dominated by men, and why King Solomon rejected caravan loads of gold with intense anger. We will witness how a massive throne was transported across continents in the blink of an eye and discover exactly what Queen Bilqis saw that caused her to believe instantly. And regarding the prophet Solomon, we will see the power granted to him by the Creator, a power given to no other human, allowing him to understand the beasts of the earth and command the Jinn to build towering structures and harvest the treasures of the deep. Before we embark on this journey through time, take a moment to rest your eyes, silence the distractions of the modern world, and let us travel back 3,000 years to the year 1000 BC. If you are listening as the sun rises, prepare your morning brew, for we must not delay. To understand the story of Sheba, we must first understand the land itself. Before there was a kingdom, there was the geography of southern Arabia, the region we identify today as Yemen. It is a land of striking geographical contradictions. To the west you have the Red Sea, and to the south the Arabian Sea. Cutting through the centre are jagged, towering mountain ranges, some reaching heights of over 3,000 metres. Behind these formidable peaks lies the vast emptiness of the Empty Quarter, the largest continuous sand desert in the world, a place almost devoid of life. However, these towering mountains were the key to survival. They acted as a massive barrier, intercepting the seasonal monsoons blowing in from the Indian Ocean. These winds would collide with the peaks, condense, and release torrential rains. Rainfall in this region is unlike anywhere else on the Arabian Peninsula. It pours with ferocious intensity during specific seasons. The problem, however, was the unpredictability. The rain comes suddenly in massive quantities and then vanishes for months. When it rains, the dry valleys transform into raging rivers in a matter of hours. Millions of cubic meters of water rush with insane speed from the mountains toward the desert, sweeping away everything in their path, including trees, animals, and boulders. Then, after a few days, all this water disappears into the sand, leaving the land parched. The people living here faced a deadly paradox. During the rains, they had more water than they could handle, leading to destruction, while for the rest of the year they faced total drought. This brutal geographical challenge confronted anyone who attempted to settle in this region. Around the year 1200 BC, a specific group of people began to solve this puzzle. These were the South Arabians, Semitic tribes speaking ancient dialects. They lived in small, scattered villages, farming what little they could and herding livestock. However, they possessed one critical advantage: ingenuity. They began to notice that certain valleys carried more water than others, and that specific locations were better suited for settlement. Slowly, over generations, they learned how to construct small barriers to divert water into their fields. These were primitive techniques at first, simply arranging stones in the valley bed to slow the flow, digging small pits to store water, or creating earthen channels to direct the flash floods. As time passed, these skills evolved into a sophisticated science. In a specific location, a valley named Wadi Dana, near an area called Marib, something momentous occurred. The disparate tribes began to unite. They realized that collective effort was far superior to individual struggle. Here, the idea of Sheba was born not yet as a kingdom, but as a tribal alliance with a singular, ambitious goal: to build something that had never been built before in this region. They planned to construct a massive dam to capture the torrential waters of Wadi Dana and distribute them throughout the year. By the 8th century BC, around the year 750 BC, the tribes of Sheba gathered in Marib and decided on a project of staggering ambition. They would build a dam, not a small barrier, but a colossal structure to completely block the valley. The theory was simple. The valley narrowed at a specific point between two mountains called Balak. If they could build a massive wall here, they could trap all the water coming from the highlands. The execution, however, was nearly impossible. We're talking about constructing a wall roughly 580 metres long, with a base 60 metres wide, reaching a height of 14 metres at its peak. This had to be done without modern machinery, without concrete, and without trucks. They had only massive stones, mud, and thousands of labourers. The engineering design was critical. The dam did not just need to hold water, it had to withstand the immense pressure of millions of cubic metres of floodwater. It had to be strong enough to resist the violent flash floods and designed in a way that allowed for the regulated distribution of water. The engineers of Sheba, whose names are lost to history but whose genius remains evident, designed something breathtaking. The dam itself was built of earth and stone in compacted layers. Massive boulders formed the exterior, while the interior was filled with earth and gravel. Every stone was chosen with care, carved, and placed with precision. But the most brilliant aspect was on the flanks. On either side of the dam they constructed complex sluice gates and spillways. The purpose of these structures was to control the flow. When the reservoir filled, the water would not spill over the top of the dam, which would destroy it, but would instead flow through these specially designed side gates. From these gates, the water was diverted into a complex network of irrigation canals. There were northern channels and southern channels. Each main canal branched into smaller ones, and those into even smaller rivulets, creating a sophisticated irrigation grid that covered a vast area. Building this structure took years, perhaps decades. Thousands of workers toiled under the scorching desert sun, transporting massive stones from distant quarries, digging deep foundations, lifting rocks with ropes and primitive pulleys, and filling the gaps with mortar and clay. They dug channels that extended for kilometres, all achieved through sweat, blood, and sheer will. Finally, on a historic day, the dam was complete. The monsoon season arrived, and the floods rushed down from the mountains as usual. But this time, instead of being lost to the desert sands, the water was caught. A massive artificial lake began to form behind the wall. When it filled sufficiently, the water began to flow in an orderly fashion through the canals. For the first time in history, the fields received a steady supply of water year-round. The result was miraculous. The arid dry land began to transform into lush green fields. Wheat and barley grew tall, palm groves were planted, vegetables and fruits flourished. Marib transformed from a small settlement into a green oasis in the middle of the desert. People began to flock there from all directions. Who would choose to live in the harsh desert when they could live in a paradise? Within a few centuries, Marib became a metropolis. The population swelled from a few thousand to tens of thousands. Massive walls were erected around the city for protection. Palaces and temples were built. Markets flourished, and Marib became the capital of the rising kingdom of Sheba. Yet the dam alone was not enough to make Sheba a global empire. There was something else, something more precious than gold itself. Incense. In the ancient world, two types of incense were considered more valuable than any other commodity: frankincense and myrrh. These aromatic resins are extracted from rare trees that grow only in very specific regions, primarily in southern Arabia, specifically the Hadramaut and Dhofar regions, and parts of the Horn of Africa. These trees are peculiar. They thrive in semi-arid, rocky terrain. They look unremarkable from the outside, gnarled and thorny, but they hold a treasure within. When the bark of the frankincense tree is slashed with a knife, a milky white sap bleeds out. This sap slowly hardens in the air, turning into solid tears of translucent white or amber resin. This is frankincense. Myrrh is a reddish-brown resin extracted in a similar fashion from a different species of tree. Why were frankincense and myrrh so incredibly valuable? There were several reasons. First was the aroma. When burned, they release a potent, beautiful fragrance that fills a space and lingers for hours. In the ancient world, where modern sanitation and perfumes did not exist, this was a rare and precious luxury. Second was their religious significance. The pharaohs of Egypt used vast quantities of frankincense and myrrh in the mummification process, believing the scents pleased the gods and aided the soul's journey to the afterlife. Temples in Greece and Rome burned incense daily as offerings to their deities. In India and China, they were used in rituals and traditional medicine. Even in later religious traditions, frankincense and myrrh are famed as gifts brought to the infant Jesus. Third was their scarcity. These trees grew nowhere else. The demand was global, but the supply was strictly limited to this small corner of the world. This created an astronomical price. In Rome, a single kilogram of high-quality frankincense could cost as much as a kilogram of gold, sometimes more. Imagine a trade that generated such astronomical profits. Sheba sat at the heart of this trade. The Hadramaut region, east of Marib, was the primary source. Local tribes would harvest the resin and sell it to merchants. These merchants would load it onto camels in massive caravans. A caravan would depart from the east and pass through Marib. In Marib, the kings of Sheba imposed a tax on every caravan. It was a hefty tax, but the merchants paid it without hesitation. Why? Because Marib was the only guaranteed safe haven with water and supplies on the long, perilous journey across the desert. Here, merchants could rest, buy food and water, repair their equipment, and prepare for the next leg. From Marib, the caravans would head north through the Arabian Peninsula, a journey taking months, passing through other kingdoms like Qataban, Main, and Dedan, eventually reaching Petra in Jordan or Gaza in Palestine. From there, the incense was shipped to Egypt, Europe, and beyond. By the time it reached Rome, its price had multiplied dozens of times over. Sheba did not just tax this trade, they controlled a significant portion of it. Their merchants bought low and sold high. Wealth flowed into Marib from every direction, funding the construction of magnificent palaces and grand temples. Marib became one of the wealthiest cities in the ancient world. However, wealth brings conflict. In the 10th century BC, amidst this golden age, the kingdom faced a crisis of leadership. History does not record his name precisely, but the oral traditions and ancient chronicles tell of a tyrant king. This king ruled with an iron fist and consulted no one. He was surrounded by a corrupt court that encouraged his despotism. Taxes were collected with brutality. Merchants were robbed, and farmers were oppressed. Those who objected were imprisoned or executed. The royal palace was a place of excess and debauchery, while the common people suffered. In this charged atmosphere lived a young woman of the nobility named Bilqis, the daughter of Al-Haddad. Accounts suggest her father was a high-ranking noble, or perhaps a regional governor. All stories agree on her exceptional nature. She was brilliant, strikingly beautiful, and possessed a commanding presence. She attended councils with her father, observing how the kingdom was mismanaged. She saw the injustice and the suffering, and she knew things had to change. But how could a woman change a regime in a world entirely dominated by men? Force was impossible. A civil war would destroy the kingdom she loved. Bilqis was smarter than that. She began by speaking to the people. First, she approached the nobles in private gatherings, away from the king's spies. She asked them if they did not see the kingdom weakening under this tyranny. At first they were fearful, but Bilqis was patient. She listened to their grievances and demonstrated that she was not merely a woman of status, but a leader with a vision. Slowly the nobles began to trust her. Then she spoke to the military commanders. They too were dissatisfied, treated as servants rather than warriors. She planted the seed of an idea. What if there were a ruler who respected them? Finally, she rallied the support of the merchants and the commoners. When she had secured enough support, she made her move. She did not want bloodshed in the streets of Marib. She wanted a clean transition. The chronicles narrate a dramatic turn of events. Bilqis proposed marriage to the tyrant king. The arrogant king, flattered that a noble beauty sought his hand, accepted immediately. On the wedding night, a lavish banquet was held. Wine flowed freely, and the king drank until he fell into a stupor. In that moment, Bilqis acted. She ordered her loyal guards to seize the king. By morning, the tyrant was dead. When the sun rose, the people found Bilqis standing in the throne room. She declared herself the Queen of Sheba. The nobles stood behind her, the army pledged loyalty, and the people rejoiced, for she promised justice. In one dramatic stroke, Bilqis, a woman no one expected to rule, became the sovereign of Sheba. But seizing power is one thing, keeping it is another. When Bilqis ascended the throne, the world watched. Could a woman govern such a complex empire? She knew her first days were critical. She had to establish authority through wisdom, not violence. Her first act was to form a consultative council. This was not a ceremonial body, but a true assembly of the wisest men in the kingdom, nobles, generals, merchants, and elders. Bilqis listened to them with genuine intent. She debated, asked questions, and made decisions based on consensus. This was revolutionary in an era of autocrats. This approach, known as shura or consultation, earned her the fierce loyalty of the elite. Next, she reformed the tax and justice systems. She ended the arbitrary cruelty of the previous reign. She reviewed past injustices and restored rights. Taxes became regulated and fair. The revenue was no longer squandered but invested back into the kingdom. Her priority was the Dam of Marib. She understood it was the lifeline of her people. She ordered regular maintenance, employing engineers to inspect the structure and clear the canals. This dedication ensured the dam's longevity. She also expanded trade, sending diplomatic missions to India and Africa, securing treaties rather than waging wars. Under her rule, Marib blossomed. It became a city of breathtaking beauty, with massive stone palaces adorned with intricate inscriptions. The temples to the moon god Al-Maka, such as the Temple of Awam, were architectural masterpieces with towering pillars and vast courtyards. The markets bustled with traders from every corner of the known world. The Roman historians later called this region Arabia Felix, or Happy Arabia, because amidst the harsh desert, Sheba was a verdant paradise. Bilqis was at the height of her glory, respected and beloved. But destiny was preparing a turn of events she could never have predicted. A message was coming from a king far to the north. But before we open that letter, we must understand the sender, Solomon, the son of David. In Jerusalem during the same era Bilqis ruled Sheba, reigned a king unlike any other in history. Solomon was a prophet of God and a king over the children of Israel. But his kingship was not ordinary. The Creator had granted him powers bestowed upon no other human. He was taught the language of birds and beasts. He could understand the chirping of the sparrow and the march of the ant. This was not magic, but a divine miracle, granting him profound insight into the natural world. Furthermore, the Jinn were subjected to his command. These beings of the unseen, created from smokeless fire, possessed strength and abilities far beyond humans. They worked as his labour force, building massive structures, diving into the oceans to retrieve pearls and coral, and crafting intricate works of art. He commanded armies of the unseen that obeyed him without question. God also subjected the wind to him. The wind would carry him and his armies across vast distances. A journey that would take a month by camel could be traversed in a single morning. Solomon possessed wisdom and knowledge that were legendary. He judged with absolute justice. His kingdom extended from the borders of Egypt to the Euphrates, vast and wealthy. Yet, with all this power, Solomon remained a humble servant of God. He knew these gifts were a test, a responsibility to establish justice and worship the one Creator. His army was a spectacle of discipline, ranks of humans, battalions of jinn, and flocks of birds hovering above to provide shade. Every day Solomon would inspect his troops, ensuring every soldier, spirit, and creature was in its place. One day, during a routine inspection of the birds, Solomon noticed a gap in the formation. A specific bird was missing, the hoopoe. The hoopoe is a distinctive bird with a crown of feathers, known for its ability to detect water underground. It was a crucial scout for the army. Solomon, noticing its absence, spoke with stern authority, asking why he did not see the hoopoe, or if he was among the absentees. He issued a severe warning that if the bird did not return with a valid excuse, it would face punishment. Solomon did not tolerate negligence. A short time later, a speck appeared in the sky. The hoopoe arrived, fluttering down, clearly exhausted from a long journey. Before Solomon could question him, the bird spoke, delivering news that would spark a clash of civilizations. The bird declared that he had encompassed knowledge that Solomon did not possess, and had come from Sheba with certain news. Sheba. The name was unfamiliar to Solomon's court. The bird continued, describing a woman who ruled them, a queen given every luxury and possessing a magnificent throne. The hoopoe described the immense wealth of the kingdom. But then came the crucial intelligence. The bird reported that he found her and her people prostrating to the sun instead of God. This stopped Solomon cold. A mighty kingdom, blessed with fertile lands and wealth, worshipping a celestial body rather than the creator of the universe. The bird lamented that Satan had made their deeds seem fair to them, diverting them from the true path. Solomon, being wise, did not act on impulse. He looked at the bird and stated that they would see if he spoke the truth or was among the liars. He ordered a scribe to write a letter. It was a brief, powerful missive. It began with the formula of monotheism. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. It was from Solomon. It did not list his royal titles or boast of his wealth. It simply stated, "Do not be arrogant against me, and come to me in submission." It was an invitation to surrender not just politically but spiritually, to submit to the one God. He sealed the letter and handed it to the hoopoe, instructing the bird to drop it to them and then watch from a distance to see their response. The hoopoe took the letter in its beak and flew south, crossing mountains and deserts until it reached the palace in Marib. It was a quiet morning in the royal chambers. Queen Bilqis was reviewing matters of state when a bird flew through the open window, dropped a parchment on her desk and perched on a high ledge. Bilqis was startled. She picked up the letter. The seal was unfamiliar. She opened it and read, "In the name of God." The words struck her. "Do not be arrogant. Come to me in submission." She read it again. Her heart raced. This was no ordinary diplomatic correspondence. It contained no demand for gold or land. It commanded humility. Bilqis, wise and cautious, realized the gravity of the situation. This was a challenge from a power she did not know. She immediately summoned her high council. The nobles, generals, and sages gathered. She stood before them, holding the letter. She addressed them, saying a noble letter had been delivered to her. She read the contents aloud. A silence fell over the room. Who was this Solomon? Bilqis turned to her advisers and asked for their counsel, stating she would not decide a matter until they were present. The military commanders, eager to prove their worth, spoke first. They boasted of their great strength and military might, stating the command was hers to give. They were ready for war. Bilqis listened, but her mind worked on a different level. She knew that war with an unknown, confident enemy was a gamble. She replied with a profound insight into the nature of conquest. She said that when kings enter a town, they ruin it and humiliate its most noble people. She did not want Marib destroyed. She did not want her people enslaved. She wanted a solution that preserved her kingdom. She proposed a test. She would send a gift to this king, a magnificent gift. If he accepted it, he was merely a worldly king seeking wealth, and they could buy him off. If he rejected it, then he was something else entirely, a prophet with a divine cause. The council agreed. Bilqis ordered the preparation of a caravan unlike any seen before. Chests of pure gold, rare jewels from the depths of the sea, bales of the finest silk, and of course, tons of the finest frankincense and myrrh. She selected her most eloquent diplomats to carry the tribute. She instructed them to observe everything, his palace, his army, his demeanour. The caravan set off on the long trek north to Jerusalem. When they arrived, the envoys were stunned. Solomon's kingdom was vast, his palace a structure of imposing grandeur. But it was the reception that shocked them. They entered the grand hall, presenting their chests of gold and jewels, expecting the king to be pleased. Instead, Solomon looked at the treasure with disdain. He asked them if they were trying to help him with wealth. He declared that what God had given him was far better than what he had given them. He told them that they were the ones who rejoiced in their gift. Then came the ultimatum. He told the envoys to return to their queen. He swore that he would come to them with armies they could not resist, and expel them from their land in humiliation. The envoys fled back to Yemen, terrified. They reported to Bilqis not just the rejection, but the impossible sights they had seen, lions and strange creatures obeying the king, an aura of divine favour that money could not buy. Bilqis listened in silence. The test was complete. Solomon was not after money. He was a prophet. She knew she could not fight him. But she was too proud to surrender from a distance. She decided to go herself. She would meet this Solomon, see his power and understand his God. She prepared a massive royal caravan and set out for Jerusalem. Solomon received intelligence that the queen herself was coming. He smiled. He did not want to conquer her. He wanted to save her. He wanted to show her that the sun she worshipped was merely a creation, and that the true power lay with the Creator. He decided to perform a miracle that would shatter her worldview. He gathered his court, the humans, the jinn, the scholars. He asked them a question. Which of you can bring me her throne before they come to me in submission? The throne of Bilqis was a marvel of craftsmanship, heavy with gold and gems, locked away in the deepest recesses of her palace in Marib, thousands of kilometers away. A powerful Ifrit from among the jinn stood up. He boasted that he could bring it before Solomon rose from his council seat. That was impressive, a matter of hours. But Solomon wanted something faster. Then, a man who possessed knowledge of the scripture, some say his name was Asaph, spoke quietly. He said, "I will bring it to you before your glance returns to you." In the blink of an eye, Solomon looked, and instantaneously, the massive throne of Sheba materialized before him. It was a teleportation that defied the laws of physics. Solomon immediately bowed in gratitude to God, acknowledging this as a test of his own thankfulness. He then ordered the throne to be disguised slightly to test Bilqis's intelligence. Disguise her throne for her. Let us see if she is guided or will be of those who are not guided. When Bilqis arrived, she was led into the hall. There, sitting before her, was a throne that looked impossibly familiar. Solomon asked her simply, "Is your throne like this?" Bilqis examined it. It was impossible for her throne to be here. It was locked in Marib. Yet every detail was perfect. She answered with supreme intelligence. It is as though it were the very one. She did not deny it, nor did she fully commit, sensing the miracle. She began to realize that the boundaries of reality were different here. But the final lesson was yet to come. Solomon invited her to enter his palace court. It was a structure built by the jinn, an architectural impossibility. The floor was made of crystal glass so pure and transparent that it was invisible. Beneath the glass flowed, running, water with fish swimming in it. As Bilqis stepped toward it, she thought it was a pool of deep water. Instinctively, she lifted the hem of her dress to keep it dry. Solomon spoke gently. "It is a palace paved smooth with crystal." In that moment, the metaphor struck her with the force of a lightning bolt. Just as she had mistaken the glass for water, she had mistaken the sun for God. She had been looking at the surface of things, seeing the power of the sun, but missing the transparent truth behind it, the Creator who sustains it. She realized her entire worldview had been an illusion. The power of her army, her wealth, her dam. It was all as fragile as glass compared to the sovereignty of the one God. She did not argue. She did not negotiate. She stood in that hall and made a declaration that echoed through history. "My lord, indeed I have wronged myself, and I submit with Solomon to God, Lord of the worlds." It was a complete surrender of the heart. Bilqis remained in Jerusalem for a time, learning the ways of monotheism. When she returned to Sheba, she was no longer just a wise queen, she was a believer. She brought the message of one God to her people. Sheba transitioned from paganism to monotheism. The kingdom continued to prosper, blessed by faith and good governance. However, time is the enemy of all empires. Centuries passed. Bilqis passed away, and new generations arose. The devotion to the dam, the constant maintenance that Bilqis had championed, began to wane. The people returned to arrogance. They took their prosperity for granted. They stopped thanking the Creator. The political stability fractured. The maintenance of the Great Dam was neglected. The small cracks in the massive wall grew larger. The sediment built up, increasing the pressure. In the 6th century AD, the catastrophe foretold occurred. The Quran describes it as the flood of Arim. A catastrophic season of rain struck. The neglected, weakened dam could no longer hold back the mountain of water. With a sound like the earth splitting open, the Great Wall collapsed. The accumulated water of years unleashed in a tidal wave of mud and debris. It swept away the gardens, the palaces, and the irrigation networks. The paradise of Sheba was erased in a single day. The fertile lands turned into swamps and then dried into dust, growing only bitter fruit and tamarisk bushes. The destruction of the dam forced a mass migration. The Arab tribes of Sheba, once united, scattered across the peninsula. They became the ancestors of the Arabs of the north. The tribes of Aus and Khazraj settled in Yathrib, later Medina, to eventually welcome the Prophet Muhammad. The Ghassanids moved to the Levant, the Lakhmids to Iraq. The diaspora of Sheba seeded the future of the Arab world. Today, the ruins of the old dam still stand in Marib, silent witnesses to a glory that once was. The story of Sheba, of Bilqis and Solomon, remains a timeless lesson. It teaches us that true power lies not in the height of our walls or the weight of our gold, but in wisdom, humility, and the recognition that all blessings require gratitude and maintenance. It is a story of a queen who had the courage to seek the truth, and a king who had the power to conquer the world but chose instead to conquer hearts. From the mountains of Yemen to the hills of Jerusalem, the echo of their meeting still resonates, reminding us that civilizations are built by hands, but they are sustained by the spirit. And so, the story concludes, leaving us with the shifting sands of the desert covering the secrets of the past.